Hey everybody, welcome to the Tiny Studio. It's your girl Nail, and this is Simply Nail's Tiny Studio. If you haven't already subscribed to this wonderful, informative, and fun channel, I don't understand what your holdup is. So guess what? I'm giving you the opportunity to subscribe now. I'll wait. Thank you so much. When you subscribe to Simply Nails Tiny Studio, you will become a guest inside of a place where all of my creativity is unleashed. I love crochet. I am a jewelry designer. I love vintage coach. And I also give tips on natural hair care. So when you step inside the Tiny Studio, these are all the things you're going to get, plus a little bit of commentary, plus a little bit of book club, all of those things that makes my tiny studio go round. You get to be a part of that fun. So thank you so much for subscribing. To all of those of you who have already subscribed, thank you so much for returning to my channel. So today it's book club time. We're going to be reading Jinger Duggar Vuolo. Hopefully I didn't jack that last name up too much. We're going to be reading her memoir, or I don't think it's necessarily a memoir. We're going to be reading her book about, well, it's about leaving the Christian fundamentalist group that she and her family and so many others are a part of. Now, before we get started, I want to put out some disclaimers here. This is not going to be a situation where I'm going to bash someone's religion or someone's religious beliefs, because I do not believe in that. If a way of life is effective and just, if this is what you need and if this is helping you spiritually, then I'm all for it. I'm not here to tear you down. So we're going to get into Ginger's book and we're going to check it out. Now, if you don't know anything about the Duggars, and come on now, everybody knows something about the Duggars, right? Whether it's good or it's negative. Well, anyway, Ginger has broken away from the faith of her family or the religion of her family, and she talks about how she arrived at the point of walking away from a Christian fundamentalist group called the Institute of Basic Life Principles started by a man named Bill Gothard or Bob Gothard. Let me just stop talking and show you the book. Okay, here it is right here. Becoming Free Indeed. My story of disentangling faith from fear by Jinger Duggar Vuolo. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Let's get into it. First, I'm going to read the back to you. Separating truth from error. Jinger Duggar Vuolo grew up in the public eye, a reality star on her family's documentaries and TV shows since the age of 10. Wow, has it really been that long? The Duggar family was known not only for its size, 19 children, but also their strict, conservative religious values, most of which were influenced by the teacher Bill Gothard and the Institute in Basic Life Principles. Ginger spent her young life devoted to these principles, which gave her a roadmap for everyday living, but also caused much fear and anxiety. Now, Bill Gothard, the life principles, he has 7 of them, 7 life principles. And this is what the foundation of what this Christian fundamentalist religion is based on. As Ginger grew older and surrounded herself with people outside of her religious circle, her faith began to transform. She let go of the rule-based practices that bound her and started to better understand the power of Jesus' love and sacrifice by realizing she did not truly understand God's love, separating truth from dangerous lies she had once believed, learning to study the Bible the correct way, and accepting that freedom is about the grace of Jesus. Becoming Free Indeed shares what it was like living under the tenets of Bill Gothard, the biblical truth that changed her perspective, and how she disentangled her faith with her belief in Jesus intact. Ginger leaves us with one last piece of wisdom. As long as I stand by Jesus' side, he promises I will bear spiritual fruit. He has promised to love me forever. Okay. All right. You go, Ginger. So let's just get into it. Okay. So there are 13 chapters with notes and acknowledgments. So we're going to get into chapter 1, Growing Up in a Fishbowl. Here's one of the many quirky facts about being a Duggar. My husband Jeremy and I didn't watch our first movie together until we were husband and wife. On our honeymoon in 2016, we watched The Truman Show. I had never seen it before. That's something I could say about a lot of movies. You probably already know that The Truman Show is about the ultimate fishbowl. The main character, Truman Burbank, is the star of a reality TV show, but he doesn't know it. Okay, so when Ginger said that she had never seen the movie The Truman Show before, well, guess what? Neither have I. And it's basically because I'm not really a Jim Carrey fan. Okay, well, back to the reading. Every moment of his life is captured for television. He lives inside a dome in Burbank, California, but he thinks he lives in a place called Sea Haven Island. Many people from the outside world have opinions and expectations about who Truman should be and how he should live. But wait a minute, she told us that the first movie that she and her fiance, or now her husband, ever watched together was after they were married? I mean, no dates to the show? That's extreme. Truman marries a woman the producers pick for him, not the woman he loves. The producers also pick his job and decide where he will live and who his best friend will be. When Truman begins to question his reality and tries to get out of Sea Haven, his escape is blocked at every turn. After we finished the movie, I turned to Jeremy and said, "That movie is my life." Well, except for the spouse picking part. I've been on television since I was 10 years old. In 2004, Discovery Health Channel aired a documentary about my family called 14 Children and Pregnant Again, which was followed by 3 more documentaries. Yes, and I remember being fascinated with this particular 14 Children and Pregnant Again because in 2004, I was pregnant as well. So I was really checking out a lot of shows back then that were tied into the reality of being pregnant. And seeing a woman who was pregnant or who had been pregnant 14 times, that was very intriguing to me. Back to the book. Eventually, we started filming a reality show for TLC called 17 Kids and Counting, which was changed to 18 Kids and Counting, and then 19 Kids and Counting as our family grew. 5 of my siblings took their first breaths on television. That makes them, like Truman Burbank, reality TV stars at birth. The show aired on TLC for 7 years, and then from 2015 through September 2020, TLC aired a spin-off show about my siblings and me called Counting On. Okay, so the reason why there was a spin-off show was because the 19 Years and Counting show was canceled. And the reason why it was canceled is because some revelations came out about Josh Duggar, their oldest child. Um, and there were some things going on with him. So that show was canceled. And then the show picked up, or the spinoff centered around um, Jill, Jill Duggar and her husband, Derek, Jessa and her husband, which I can't remember his name, and Ginger and some of the other siblings. Occasionally, um, Amy, no, not Amy. What is Josh Duggar's wife name? Is her name Amy? I can't think of that girl's name right now, but it featured her. She would be on the show as well with her kids. And some of the other Duggar siblings were featured on Counting On. Okay. And I think two of their brothers were married. The younger brothers, Duggar sons, were married on the Counting On show. Okay. Back to the book. Life on TV. Oh, and then eventually Counting On was canceled. And it was canceled because of the new charges that came up against Josh. So TLC was like, well, you know what? Even though Josh doesn't appear on the show, but his wife does occasionally, we're just going to scrap this whole thing. Okay, we're just done with the Duggars. All right. And I think that happened when? In 2021? Or no, it happened during the pandemic in 2020 because they were filming, if I'm correct in my memory, I think they were filming and then all of this stuff jumped off about Josh and then that was just it. All right, back to the reading. Life on TV has its perks as well as its challenges. For me, one of those challenges has been dealing with other people's expectations. When strangers expect me to make certain decisions, even rooting for me to make them as if I'm a character on a sitcom, they seem to forget that I am a real person with my own feelings and emotions. Add my family's values to the equation, and you get even more criticism and opinions and debates about how I should live. Every decision is put under a microscope, dissected, and either criticized or praised. It hasn't always been easy knowing that millions of strangers have strong opinions about what I should or shouldn't do, say, or be. I am a people pleaser. I don't like conflict, and I don't want to be the center of attention. But that last part comes with being on television. As I quickly learned after my family show started, and a few of my on-air offhand comments started a movement. During several episodes of 19 Kids and Counting, our family traveled to cities like New York, Chicago, and London. We even went to Disneyland in Southern California. I especially enjoyed those trips because I've always loved big cities. I'll never forget my first visit to Times Square. I loved all the people out and about, the hustle and bustle. It was energizing, exhilarating. It made me feel small and important at the same time. My sister Jessa and I like to pretend we were big city locals. We would pack for our siblings before trips to New York for filming with Good Morning America or The Today Show. We try to select the most stylish outfits from the family closet. Okay, so I'm gonna start laughing here. She said they were trying to pick the most stylish outfits from their family closet. Well, I guess if you don't watch TV and you don't read magazines, how would you know what is most stylish, right? Because I'm going to tell you, the outfits that they were wearing on that show, they weren't stylish at all. But let's get back to the reading. One time we even met former President Bill Kennedy on the Today set. The producers thought it was neat that he, like us, was from Arkansas. They piled our whole family on this couch and asked the president to take a picture. As Bill Clinton walked toward all of us, he tripped on a cord and accidentally grabbed one of my sisters by the hair to stop his fall. We had a good laugh about it. To me, this perfectly encapsulated the magic of New York. Big cities always held the possibility of a surprise introduction or unexpected encounter. On one of the talk shows, I mentioned my love for cities, and from what I can tell, that is why I became the namesake of a new Duggar family forum. Critics of the show and of my family's lifestyle interpreted my love for cities as a rejection of rural, small town life. They assumed that if I wanted to live in a big city, that also meant I wanted to break away from the values of my childhood, since most cities are overwhelmingly secular. Deeply religious and conservative people often talk about the temptations and dangers of big cities. Those who embrace city life typically aim to reinvent themselves or find themselves. Apparently, the moderators of this forum thought I was after the same thing. They thought I had an independent, free loving spirit. Their website says they chose the name Free Ginger because they saw in me a spark and spunk. Also, I think they thought my name was funny. So there's that. I admit I'm a little bit touched that the curators of this website named it after me. Not because I appreciate the notoriety, but because these people in their own way have expressed compassion for me. They think complete freedom is the ticket to happiness. Yes, I have always wanted to live in a big city. I love living in Los Angeles today, but not for the reasons the Free Ginger founders assumed. I love the excitement. I love the variety of people and the seemingly endless number of places to go and things to do. I don't see the city as a place to find myself or shake free from the world in which I grew up. It doesn't offer me limitless freedom. Instead, living in the city is an opportunity for me to serve others and maximize the life God has given me. No rules, no limitations, no authority beyond yourself. The curators of the website saw in me a girl they assumed didn't have the good life because she didn't have unbridled freedom. They thought if this girl could break free from her family's ultra conservative rules, if she could wear what she wanted, date who she wanted, pursue the career she wanted, and eat and drink what she wanted, then she would be happy. And they're not alone. Most people think they have to be free from all restraints to be happy. Freedom is the water in which our culture swims, something as essential to most people as gravity. So I think it's caring that others want so I think, that it's caring that others want this for me, even if I don't embrace their version of the good life. Okay. Now that was really interesting. I like to hear people's perspectives on what freedom really is. I think most people who come from an oppressed situation or an oppressed culture that suppresses their freedoms in some respects, I think everyone has a concept of what freedom should be. This country is based on the concept of freedom, which at the time was the freedom from the authoritarianness of the monarchy in Britain, in England. So every repressed culture has their own definition of freedom. But when it comes to religious freedom, people believe religious freedom means that you're taking off the shackles of oppression or some type of impression that religion or Christianity or Buddhism or Islam puts onto you as a person. But she's going to talk about a religious freedom, a different kind of religious freedom that she's going through or that she underwent. So let's get back into it and wrap this book club up for the day. Okay? Freedom from religion. I am not in search of total freedom from rules and biblical morals, but that doesn't mean I am the same Ginger I was when the website started. My faith has changed dramatically. I do not believe the same things I used to believe 5 or 10 years ago about God, the Bible, and the Christian life. I like to talk about what has changed. But first, I need to make something clear. I am not deconstructing my faith. Deconstruction is a popular word in Christian circles today. It represents a movement of young people who grew up in Christian homes but in adulthood have decided that much, if not all, of what they were taught as children is not for them. They've abandoned their religious beliefs. They tore them down and never rebuilt any kind of faith. Perhaps the most famous example of this is Joshua Harris. I don't know who this Joshua Harris is, but let's continue reading to find out. Growing up, I believed a lot of the same things Harris did. I never read I Kissed Dating Goodbye, but from what I knew of the book, I was sure its principles worked. It was easy to admire Harris. Throughout the late 90s and early 2000s, Joshua Harris was one of the country's best known evangelicals. I Kissed Dating Goodbye sold more than 1 million copies and shaped how an entire generation of Christians, including me, talked about dating, courtship, and relationships. Purity culture was a hot topic, mostly because of Harris. There weren't any young evangelicals with a brighter future. Okay. I do remember some of this. Do you remember that group called Hanson? And I'm trying to think it was somebody else. Eventually, the Jonas Brothers would get into it, but Hanson was into that purity religious movement. I think this guy, they were following him as well. Don't quote me on that, but I do remember hearing about the purity stuff. And remember they used to have these conventions or conferences, these purity conferences where all the young people would get together and they would pledge purity or, pledge to keep their virginity until they got married. Do you guys remember that? That was happening like in the late 90s, early 2000s. All of that was happening. There was like even these purity rings and stuff. Do you guys remember that? Okay, so I kind of remember some of this. I had a teenage daughter or a preteen daughter going into well, she was into Hanson and all of that. So I remember hearing all of this stuff about the purity stuff and the purity ring and all of that stuff like that. So I'm going to ask her a little bit about that later on, see if she remembers somebody named Joshua Harris. But let's get back to the book. That's why I was shocked when in the fall of 2019, this influential author, conference speaker, and former pastor announced that he was no longer a Christian. This announcement came shortly after he and his wife separated. The woman he describes meeting and courting in Boy Meets Girl, his follow-up to I Kissed Dating Goodbye. And 4 years after Harris left Covenant Life Church in Gaithersburg, Maryland, where he served as pastor for 11 years. Harris's decision to leave the ministry in his marriage and reject the faith discouraged many Christians. If someone with Harris's pedigree of personal discipleship and ministry preparation could abandon Christianity, it seemed any believer could do the same. 2 years after Harris's surprise announcement, I heard he was selling an online course called Reframe Your Story, which included a deconstruction starter pack. It cost $275, although it was free for anyone who claimed they were hurt by his previous ministry. He said the curriculum was created for people who are unpacking and have questions and are changing their belief, who feel really alone in doing that. End of quote. He also said that he, quote, wanted to create something to help people reframe their thinking and to be able to decide for themselves what things they want to hold on to and if they want to let go of certain religious ideas. End of quote. Harry's evolution was complete. He was no longer one of the country's most popular Christians. He was now leading something entirely different, the deconstruction movement. Mm, now that's something. I could see how that could have been a really good shot for a lot of people who are following or who were following this young man. And I'm guessing it was a shock for Ginger as well. You know, you following somebody and you're looking up to this guy and you're basing your life. You're like, oh, you know what? I agree with him. I'm going to do exactly what he's doing. He's got the right path. And then all of a sudden, dude tells you, no, I don't. No, I don't. I don't have the answer either. Okay, we're going to get into this next subheading and then we're going to put a bookmark right here. And this subheading is deconstruction or disentanglement. In some ways, I think Harris and I found ourselves in a similar place a few years ago. Like him, I grew up in a conservative Christian home. Like him, I was in the public eye from a young age. And like him, I came to a point in adulthood when I realized that my understanding of Christianity was insufficient. But today, there's a massive gulf between Harris and me. Instead of deconstruction, my faith journey is one of disentanglement. I've come to understand that in the Christianity of my childhood, elements of the true gospel of Jesus Christ were tangled up with false teaching. I spent 8 years unthreading my faith, separating truth from error. Understanding my story of unthreading starts with the fishbowl I grew up in and the two very different expectations that were placed on me as a part of that world. Wow. So, what did you guys think about that? It's very interesting, isn't it? It's very interesting, and especially if you have been following the Duggars for a long time. You know, I've been following them, like I said, since 2004, and I always find it's to me it's really fascinating how other people interpret Christianity, and to see the Duggars and where they live. It was kind of like for me, it was I don't want to say it was inspiring, but it was I kind of like the fact that they were actually living what they believed, sincerely believed. And that's a lot of things you don't find today when you talk about people who are Christians, because nowadays you have people who say they're Christians and the next minute you know they're blessing you out for one thing or another, or they're doing something that's questionable, and then they be like, "Look, don't judge me. Don't judge me. Only God can judge me." You know, those are today's Christians. You know what I'm saying? So I always thought that felt that the Duggars, no matter how extreme I may have thought that their way of life was, I just felt that it was cool and refreshing to see a group of people who were actually living you know, the way they felt that Christianity or the way Christians should live. But I guess it can feel kind of defeating when one of the people that you're like, hey, you know, they're on the right path too. They're following that journey. They're going there. They're seeking out the way. And then when you find out that that person's like, I'm no longer a Christian, you be like, what? And she said he was a pastor of his church called what? The True Covenant. What was the name of his church? The Covenant Life Church for 11 years. So can you imagine that? Somebody for 11 years that you're going to see every Sunday or whenever they go. And then all of a sudden he tells you he's not a Christian. Because, when somebody tell you that they're not a Christian anymore, those implications are, okay, so what does that mean? You don't believe in Jesus Christ? Is that what you're saying? Do you believe in God? Are you an atheist? I'm sure the people at his church really had a lot of questions, because that's a lot. And how do you get to the point when you say, I'm not a Christian anymore? After you done sold all these books and made all this money, how do you ever get to that point? Were you ever a Christian in the first place? See, those are the questions that I have for that guy. But that's another subject, and that's another time that I may look him up, but I may not. Anyhow, thank you so much for hanging out with me today in the tiny studio to read a little bit of Becoming Free Indeed by Jinger Duggar Vuolo. And next time in book club, we will consider some more excerpts from her book. She is on a press tour right now in the media. So if you're unfamiliar with her story and you want to, catch up on it before our next book club time, go ahead and do so. I'm thinking yesterday she was on the Tamron Hall show. She was, and I also saw her on I think People magazine interviewed her, and that interview should be posted on YouTube. So, anyhow, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. And that's going to be the conclusion of book club time. So, come on back next week and we will read some more of Becoming Free Indeed by Jinger Duggar Vuolo. I'll see you next time. And don't forget, if you enjoyed this video and you want to see some more content like this, give me a thumbs up. That lets the YouTube gods and goddesses know that Simply Nails Tiny Studio is a relevant channel. I'll check you out next time. Bye bye.